The sun rises and the heartbeat of the world begins. Where does today take you? What new journey begins? Take a leap and live the impossible dream. Create your own new story from your soul. Millana Snow, I have been waiting for this interview with you for a long time. I think many of the things that you are doing in your life kind of embody everything that Soulivity.com is about. And so I followed you for a long time. We've even had conversations over the internet about all different kinds of things. I feel as though you're like one of my dearest friends now, even though I haven't met you in person yet. And so I'm glad that you're here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. We're long overdue. I appreciate
A-
you inviting me to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I typically ask this question last, but when I was feeling my way through how I wanted to interview you, I decided to ask you this question first. And that is, I mean, you've been so successful as a healer, as a teacher, as an entrepreneur, um, also as a woman of color, because I also want to bring that piece into it as well. How does it feel for you to be at this point in your journey?
Mm, that's a great question. Well, thank you for that reflection. I think for me, it's all about it being a journey. There is never an end post. There's never a thing that says, and now I've got it.
Yeah,
And I
right.
think I appreciate that about life, and I appreciate that about the way that I've kind of taken on my vision. My vision is always expanding, and so I believe a part of my purpose is to be loyal and persistent in fulfilling my reason for being here on the planet, and I'm informed by that and understand that more and more every single day. So I really do my best to make every day a new opportunity, every moment a new opportunity for something new to come through me.
Right.
And that can be very vulnerable, and that can be very enlivening and challenging and beautiful. So I don't tend to look at myself as in terms of like measuring success. I tend to really just take every day and every opportunity that feels like it's coming through me as kind of a new beginning and a new start. And so that's kind of what I feel like on a day to day basis.
Wow. I mean, and that's so cool because I guess um, when I talk to people that I come to, meet throughout Soulivity, we talk about that, right? And that there's never this kind of like people think about, oh, when I reach this thing, then I'll know that I've reached a certain level and that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, what really it feels like is that you're on this journey and that you
Yeah.
there's like all this range of emotion that you go through as you're going through it, right? Happy, joy, sadness, tranquility, peace. I mean, a whole bunch of different things. So thanks for that. Thanks for that. I just,
Thank
and
you.
I'm glad I asked that first.
Damn, that was a great question.
Um, Now that people have like a sense of where you are, was there a specific point in your life where you decided that, listen, I'm putting a stake in the ground and this is the work that I'm being led to do. I'm going to go forth. Or was this something that you had been doing all along?
Hmm. That's a great question. I've been working on writing a book lately, and it's given me the opportunity to look at my life and my life story in a more detailed reflective, introspective way than I think I ever have. And one of the things I was writing about just yesterday was the realization that at a very young age, I I had to believe that everything I was going through was for a purpose and a reason. And I think there's a
Mm.
lot of people out there who had traumatic childhoods, who had really tough upbringings, who were at that crossroads at one point in their youth, unfortunately. And in some ways it's a gift. And so in reflecting on that recently, I realized that I had to make sense out of what I experienced as a child. I moved a lot, had a lot of big T traumas, as they call it, had a very unstable childhood. And so, in the
Yeah.
midst of that, at a really young age, I had to make a reason why this was going to be something that I could survive. And for me, it was this idea that I likely got from my spiritual practice because I started meditating at a very, very young age, that I was here for a reason, and that was to make this world a better place. And
Wow.
so I think that that hit me around the age of 10 or 11. And I do think that a lot of that came from meditation and spirituality. And my grandmother taught me how to meditate when I was 4 years old. So that was
Mm.
a
Wow.
really beautiful and important tool that I relied on from childhood onward. So that kind of was like the foundation that I was working with and really used as a survival mechanism. And
Mhm.
then as I got older and as things kind of opened up new opportunities, that was kind of always undergirding my mission. So when I started modeling, honestly, modeling came up out of another survival mechanism. When I started to heal and share the healing work that I'd been doing privately, that was actually the first time in my life that I wasn't doing something out of survival. It was
Wow.
an opportunity for me to do something that I was inspired to share, and something that I
Mm.
was passionate about personally, that I was finally ready to share professionally. So a lot of my life has kind of been that that underlying knowing, but for so long, like so many people all over the world, it was kind of kept at a certain level of expression because I was in survival mode and I needed to just get by. So I'm so grateful that I finally got to a place when I moved to New York and really started to experience so much more opportunities, and doors started to open where I got to actually express myself and my purpose in a way that felt meaningful and real for me and inspiring for me.
Wow. Thank you for that, by the way. I knew there was a reason why we had connected a long time ago. And I find this to be true with other people who I connect with, and that is all the people that are in my life that are close, right, really, really know me, have all gone through, in some shape or form, becoming more aware about their childhood traumas and really going down deep and really doing the healing and letting it be and letting what's ever birthed out of that happen.
Mm.
So thanks for sharing
Mhm.
that part. What was I mean, can you share a little bit more about that part of your life? I know that, I don't want to get all in your business, as people say,
No, it's all good.
but um, I know in my own life, I had childhood trauma with my mother. She
Mm.
was a manic depressive, and when I was very young, there was all kinds of stuff that was happening around there. And I'm trying to capture
Mm.
this in some type of memoir myself. Um,
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that part of your life, and then also what were the empowering things that came from that later?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that about your mom. And I've had quite a few family members who struggle with that manic
Yep,
depression, and I know how challenging that is for kids and for the parents who are struggling with that. And
absolutely.
I find that so many, unfortunately, too many Americans, and well, personally, from what I've seen in my work, people globally have struggled with that without having support, without having professional diagnosis or professional therapy. And so, like so many kids, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of mental illness, substance abuse,
Wow.
and instability without there being support for the adults or the children in the household. I think what was really unique, though, about my childhood, because I do find, unfortunately, having worked with so many clients around the world, that mental
Hmm.
illness and dysfunctional families is very common, unfortunately. But one of the things
Hmm.
that was, I think, really um, specific about my journey was that I also moved a lot as a kid. So from about the
Right.
age of 3 until 13, I moved over 10 times. I went to
Wow.
7 different schools. I lived in 3 different states. I never lived anywhere longer than 2 years until I was 17, and that's 4 years was the longest I ever lived anywhere until I
Wow.
became an adult and lived on my own when I moved out at 17. So, when you couple like the big T traumas with regular displacement, something really interesting happens if you can cope with that. And that is that I did not have a standard cultural or communal experience. So, because I'm mixed heritage, my dad's Afro-Panamanian, my mom's white American with some European blood, and because I look so ethnically ambiguous, I grew up all over the country without anybody, including myself, being able to name what I was or what I should say or how I should say it or how I should dress, how my hair should be. So I grew
Right.
up without any cultural dogma, is basically what I'm saying. I didn't have religious influences. I didn't have communal influences, what my speech or my music should be like. And that was both a gift and a really challenging curse at times, because it allowed me to decide who I wanted to be, but it also created a personality where I was constantly changing and uncertain of who I really was without having that feedback
Wow.
from a community or even a family unit to reflect back to me who I was as an
Wow.
individual. So I grew up not having a racial identity. I grew up not having a religious or spiritual identity, and I grew up without having really a familial foundation to say what my beliefs should or shouldn't be, which is really really something.
Right. I mean, I mean, and and children are resilient, but they're resilient in a way where we decide what all that means, and a lot of times it's just to survive, right? It's just to try to get through the day to day, getting up and moving through life. But that doesn't serve you later on when you go from surviving to living to thriving, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it's and so you have no directional star of where to go. How did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, this is literally what I'm writing my book about, because I feel
Right,
like the only way that people can get out of survival when you have been arrested in your development, which
right,
tends to happen when you have trauma as a child and haven't been able to heal, is self healing. So, my journey to
right.
going from survival for most of my life to finally just living to actually thriving in most areas of my life as a healthy individual, it is primarily based out of self-healing. And of course I have and had teachers and healers and therapists, and I've read many many books and have gone to trainings and retreats, but most of that is undergirded by a deep desire to heal myself and to make meaning out of chaos, to make meaning out of meaningless um, struggle. And so I think if this can be helpful to anyone out there, I think what I've found in both healing myself and helping working with healing others all over the world or supporting them in their healing all over the world
Yeah.
is that when you have trauma in your childhood or you have dysfunction in your family, you tend to become arrested in your development. And so you might age in your body, but you're
Yeah.
still the same age in which you experience that trauma. Your development mentally, emotionally, and spiritually is paused. And so what I see so often is adults, both men and women, who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and older, who are still operating at the emotional level of a 12-year-old, of a 20-year-old, and And that can be really harmful, not just to that individual, but to their families and to our
Mm.
society. And I think that's what we're seeing in our culture today, arrested development because of unresolved trauma. And my thesis is that the way that we heal that culturally, individually, communally, familially, is by healing ourselves, because we're the only ones that
Yes.
can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's a long-term friend of ours named Arnold Patton that had these universal principles, and one of them was we start from completion, right? And so
Mm,
if we never get to the point at which we've even begun to self-heal, we have to start there. We can have the
yes,
trinkets and the cars and all other kinds of things that may make us feel a certain way temporarily, right?
yes,
Temporarily, but we don't get to fully sustainable healthiness and wholeness unless we start from that place and do the self-healing work. So thank you. Woo.
yes. I'd
I
love
was
to
up here
dig
like
into
about to
that.
grab the white
Yeah,
handkerchief over here and start with.
yeah, there's some really good stuff there, Brian. Because I think, I've been thinking a lot about wholeness and how it relates to healing. And my
Yes.
my hypothesis on that is that we are whole, and we've always been whole. Our
Yes.
trauma and our programming and our
Yes.
communal and cultural agreements make us believe that we are not whole. So the opposite of wholeness and health is not brokenness or being messed up or
Right.
wrong. It's actually
Right.
illusion. It's the
Right.
illusion that we are not whole. So
Mm.
healing is actually the remembering of who we truly are. And I love that earlier you said you have to like go deep down. You have to go deep down inside of yourself to get back to that core part
Or
of you that always is and always will be, that your personality and your trauma does not dictate or change. And I think when we think about healing today, it's not just the spiritual and the woo woo, it's really getting back to this core self, that the
right.
stories of your trauma, the stories of your experiences, the identities that you then put on are actually an illusion. And so pulling those things back and going deeper and deeper into ourselves, that's how we come back to wholeness.
Absolutely. You know, the I have another dear friend of mine, Howard Caesar, who wrote a book called One Plus One is One. And he talks a lot
Mm,
of time about this idea that we're all we're doing is those things, we're just covering over what is already there, and what we're to do
yes,
is to wipe it away and get back to that
yes.
core. um Speaking of this and getting back to this place, right? Because I find in my own life that the more I do this, the younger I actually feel, the more
Oh, I love
energetic
that.
I feel, right?
Yes.
And so you have all these wonderful classes and courses, and you even do one-on-ones with clients. What's the most common theme that you come across
Ooh,
with different people?
mm,
Like is it is it childhood trauma in terms of a certain thing, or is it
mm,
something that they're not aware of yet that relates to that?
mm. I would say, whether they're aware of it or not, the theme that I have seen with myself and my clients is the suppression of who they are and what wants to come through them. So a lot of
Wow.
times, I
Wow.
think
That's
people are
deep.
actually most afraid of being more of who they really are, because of what they imagine that they will lose in the process, not recognizing that everything is always changing and that you have to let go to make space for what wants to be. And so I love that you said that you feel more alive when you do this work, because the more that we pull back these layers of our ego's identity of who we think we are or who we think we should be, the
Mhm.
more we uncover our true essence, which is the nature of our aliveness, right?
Right.
That oneness, that soul, that spirit, that eternal youthful inner child that is in all of us. So I find that a lot of times people are really just afraid of letting those identities fall away, and they believe, I think we all believe, that that's a form of
Right.
death and that we are afraid of dying, whether we're conscious of those identities being a death or not. So
Right.
an example of that might be someone could be really interested in starting a new business and following their heart since they were a kid. They've maybe had an idea they've always wanted to pursue. They're realizing like, man, this physical body is aging. I don't have that much time. Let me get to this thing that I've always wanted to do. And
Right.
then they let themselves start to feel the excitement of it and the joy of what could be possible. And they think then in contrast about how maybe their husband or wife won't accept them, or how
Wow.
maybe how scary it might be that if they become wealthy that their family won't love them anymore, right? So we start thinking about all of these things, all these beliefs
Mm.
that are actually built in from cultural and familial agreements that aren't necessarily true or that aren't necessarily supportive of your health and well-being. So this idea of becoming more of who we are, I find, is often conflicted with beliefs and programs that we can know and then let go if we have the courage to look deep inside of ourselves and
Right.
to accept that things will change and that maybe some of those agreements with others won't work out.
Wow. Mm, that the white hanky's going up again. Um, no, I mean, you're preaching some things here. I mean, and I don't mean that in, the traditional kind of way. I mean, just energetically, you're speaking a lot of truth. And I think that a lot of times people don't, again, they're afraid of the truth. They think they can't handle the truth.
Mhm.
And one of the most amazing prayers that I've heard is help, right?
Mhm.
Especially with men. Men get managed
Mhm.
and they think that they can handle the world, and they don't go out and
Mhm.
and they don't seek help. They don't even ask for help. And the other one, and there's another prayer which is, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be
Mhm.
okay. I'm going to be okay,
Mhm.
right? I'm going to go through
Yes.
these things and I am going to be okay. Affirmational prayer. And I hear that in what you're saying, right? I'm hearing that,
Yes.
listen, this was a normal that I had for all these years. I'm going to take the leap of faith and create a new normal. I can still choose that if I want.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
outcomes are going to lead me back over here, right? Or the choice of being over here with this new normal. And as I
Yes.
choose it, I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
Um, wow. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Um, you know, wow. You talked about like your childhood and moving through these different aspects of your life. Do you feel like because you went through those things, you have more tools in your tool belt as you are relating to other people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the thing that's so beautiful about going through that full completion of healing a traumatic experience or a trauma or a loss, really like bringing it into completion and resolution, is that then it gets to be a gift.
Whew,
If we
yes.
leave something unresolved, then it's a burden. But if we bring it into completion, then it is a gift for our use and for the benefit of ourselves and others. So something I shared on social media for the first time a couple of days ago was that I was actually suffocated as a child for
Yeah, I
about a
saw that. My goodness.
yeah, and it's completely resolved in me. I feel now so grateful that I was able to use that experience as a gift that informs my well-being but also informs the work that helps so many people with breath work. I can't imagine that I would be a breathwork teacher if I didn't have that experience that was kind of playing out in the background as I was healing myself. And now that I've really revisited that experience and really worked through that emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, for years, I realized that as challenging and as tragic and unfortunate as that was, it
Mhm.
actually ended up being something that was a major turning point in who I am today in the most positive ways, in ways that outweigh
Wow.
the pain and the trauma that it caused. And so now, when people ask me about the gift of breath, or they're afraid of going deeper into their minds or their experiences or their memories because of what breath can do, I understand and I can reflect back to them how deeply I understand that compassion is real and thorough. And it's not that you have to go through those levels of trauma to be able to experience or share that kind of compassion. But I will say that bringing that trauma in particular to completion was what made that for me something that I'm even more passionate about. It's almost like it gave me fuel to get this
Wow.
message out to a greater audience so that fewer people would A, cause that kind of pain towards others, but B, can use what I've learned to transform their pain and their trauma in an empowering way. So it has layered use. And I don't think that we have to go through trauma to be able to
Right.
give gifts of lives.
Right.
I'm not saying
Right.
that, but I will say that we all have experiences that we can transform and resolve, and that those things can be used for our good and for the good of the whole.
You know, I am
I don't know.
so glad you said that. I am so glad you said that. Because and we're going to get into I want to hear a little bit more about the breath work part of this. I think people forget again that you don't have to operate from your old stuff. That once you
Yes.
master a certain thing, now you have a choice. You can either do it the other way where you get knocked down, beat up, you know, go through this traumatic experience and then you kind of pick yourself up and heal and oh, this is the lesson. Or you can choose to just go straight to the next lesson through whatever work that you
Yeah.
need to do and you can leave the trauma and stuff behind or
Mm.
lessen amounts of trauma, right? It might be a little bit
Yeah.
of pain because, you know, there has to be something to get you to move. Sometimes it's a
Yes.
whisper, sometimes it's knocking you down, but it's your choice. Um,
Yes.
let's talk about breath work. Um,
Hmm.
I was introduced to breath work a long time ago as well.
Amazing.
With through rebirthing. With
Ooh.
the deep work, yeah. Oh yeah.
Look at you,
It was
man.
deep.
That's awesome.
It was
That's cool.
girl, it was
A
mind
very powerful
blowing.
experience.
Mind blowing experience. I was like, I don't think I was in even a teen yet. And
Wow.
my parents were doing this 1 year seminar where they were bringing in all these different healers to do workshops every single month for 12 months. And one of them was a rebirthing person, a breathwork person. And
Wow.
man, we regressed all the way back to childhood. I could literally taste the anesthesia in my mouth coming up and out.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
wow.
And so y'all better go see Millana and do some breath work. It is it's the real deal. It really is the real
Yes.
deal because everything goes back to your breath. So talk about this. Talk about this, not just concept, but this practice, this healing practice that's been around for a long time.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I always like to remind people that breath work comes in many forms, and it originates from many ancient and indigenous cultures from all over the world. So it's in everybody's blood, not to mention that we all breathe. So it's free and it's
Right.
beneficial and doable by anybody who breathes. And yes, there are different ways to do it, and maybe some patterns of breath aren't for everyone, but the practice that I practice is a 3-part breath. And it's 2 inhales in, one into the lower belly, then into the heart, and then exhale out all through the mouth.
Wow.
And I do that pattern of breath when I'm teaching that anywhere from about 15 minutes all the way up to 2 hours, which can be varying degrees of intensity, as you can imagine, when you get up into the past 45 minutes. Um, and one of the things I find so beautiful about breath work and the pattern of breath that I practice is that it really goes into so many layers of what it means to be a human, right? So you have
Mm.
physical experiences where your body will maybe start to tremor or shake. You'll maybe have tingling sensations, but you'll also start to tap into your nervous system in ways that maybe are more challenging than when you would do breath work. So you start to tap into the parasympathetic system, which is your rest and digest. And you can also tap into the sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. So you're tapping into the nervous system in a way that is not typical, because you're activating what's called the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in your body that tells your brain what state the nervous system should be in. And then you start to move into things like releasing with physical tears, releasing all those stressor chemicals that are toxic and cause all kind of disease in the body. You're actually going to be able to sweat and tear some of those things out in a way that might be harder to get to if you were to just try to make yourself cry or tell a sad story. And then what starts to happen beyond the physical, I think, is maybe even more interesting. And that is that people of all backgrounds, all religious and spiritual beliefs, or atheist and agnostic as well, start to experience what some might call their spirit or their soul, or more spiritual experiences that are kind of beyond words, beyond what we understand to be normal in everyday life. So maybe they start to see things that they didn't remember, or they started to have the experience of connecting to oneness, or feeling like they are everything and nothing, light and heavy at the same time. You start to have all these really beautiful emotional, physical, spiritual experiences all at once. And I think what it all comes back to is it's bringing you into what I call deep presence. And deep presence is the state in which we are our true selves, where all of our stories and identities fall away, and we become that essence that I was talking about before, where everything is peaceful, everything is whole. And when you start to have that experience for even seconds, it completely reorganizes your perspective on your life and on the world and on the stories that we have going on in our culture. And that is in itself life-changing. And I know that's a big sell that I just pitched, but it really is that transformational. And I actually learned, I'll just say, I learned that if I didn't warn people that these experiences are deeply transformational, that people were getting upset because their whole lives would change after just an hour. And it really is that potent.
Wow. And I challenge people sometimes to, like, just do 30 days. Do 30 days of this kind of work in your life, and make sure that you're journaling or making a recording or something to track it, right? Because your brain is going to tell you, oh, that's not real. That's a coincidence. What are you talking about?
Totally.
These beautiful people came into my life because of this, and these other people left because my energy shifted and I've gotten more peaceful, things like that.
Speak on that, Brian. You already know. That's
that's a whole nother interview, okay?
Another symptom I gotta warn y'all about. People and places will start to shift. Things will start to happen that you had nothing to do with, except for the fact that you went into a deeper state of knowing yourself. And then the people that don't feel good just stop coming around.
Yeah, well, my usefulness here is over. So let me move on. On a serious note, and then we're going to go to some joy real quick. There's a lot of things that are in the news, and a lot of things that are in our experience that we deem traumatic, like the young man in Kansas City. Gosh, I'm missing his name. We just talked about him on our show this morning, who was shot just by ringing a doorbell. He was a young black man. He was 16. He mistakenly went to the wrong house to either pick up some siblings or that kind of thing. And he was shot twice. The elderly white male who shot him has been arrested and is going to be tried for 2 felonies. And it's at those times, I think, that are most challenging for us sometimes. Especially, I look at myself as a man of color. And there's histories and all that kind of stuff. And in addition to that, I'm I'm a spiritual being living the human experience, and this stuff is happening, and it pisses me off, or it makes me angry or tearful, and that kind of thing. And I know you've talked about this in other on social media. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you handle this and how you give to other people
Mhm.
tools to handle situations like this?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's so
This is
painful
real.
being a human. It's so painful being a human. There's so much grief
Absolutely.
that we have to hold
Absolutely.
just to be in this modern world. And so our healing includes all of that, right? Especially as you become more sensitive and more compassionate, it really takes a new level of concerted effort to be in the healing process as a lifestyle, because you absorb and feel into the pain of the people around you and in the
Right.
world.
Right.
So the first thing that comes to mind is that we really got to remember that healing is a lifestyle, it's a way of living. And in that restorative, regenerative way of living, we are able to include the painful experiences of being a human, and then transmute and transform that pain for our good and the good of the whole. Because what I find happens so often is that because people are not healing and transmuting the grief and the pain of, let alone watching these things,
Right.
not to mention
Right.
actually being experiencers of these tragedies,
Right.
is that we are now in turn perpetuating them and continuing to repeat those tragedies because we
Mm,
aren't completing them and healing them within ourselves, right? So
mm,
we're acting out from a place of pain, a place
mhm,
of
mm,
reactivity instead of response from a compassionate and loving and whole place. So
mhm.
I think the thing that comes to mind when I was reading about this young man yesterday and was really feeling for him and praying with him and his family, or at least, in my own home and in my own heart, I really had to hold the space for the fact that my humanness, being a Black woman, a multicultural woman, all of those things, feels a particular fearfulness and pain of not feeling safe in this physical body in our culture today. And I need to hold space for that, right?
Yeah.
That's my human
Yeah.
experience. And while I know that I'm more than this physical body and the skin color and the stories and the history of this physical body, I still have this physical body,
Right.
right? I still have this identity until my new identity arises in whatever way. And so I think it's holding both, right? It's like, yes, I am infinite. I am a spirit having a human experience. And yet I'm in this physical body that has stories, that has trauma, that has things that on a daily basis she has to hold and work through. And so we got to
Right.
hold both of these things. And
Absolutely.
practices like breath work, practices like going into these deep states with meditation or plant medicine, working with healers and elders, these are how we can hold both of these truths, that I am both a human and I am a spirit. And in the spirit
Right.
realm, I know that all of this is fine.
Right.
But in the
Right.
physical realm, I know that I am feeling pain. And that's whether that I'm experiencing it in real time or I'm observing it and feeling the pain because of how I am connected to it. It's
Right.
all the same. And so one of the things I say about love, love is this ever evolving container of yes. It's this ever evolving container of yes and. Yes, I am human and I'm infinite. Yes, I am in pain and everything is okay.
Right.
And that
Right.
that is only going to come from a lifestyle and a consistent everyday practice of repair and restoration.
Mm, mm, mm. You know, I'm a firm believer that we choose to come back and back and back. We go over and we come back and we go over and come back. And that we choose our experiences like, oh, what do I want to learn this time? Right? And so let me
Yes.
come down, let me embody a black female, become a black female or a black male or an indigenous person in the 21st century or whatever. And these are the experiences that I'm going to have. Now, again, there's the pain, part of it, right? There's the traumas that you may go through and all these different experiences, but there are underlying deeper reasons for that journey. And I think it's to
Absolutely.
experience deeper and deeper love, as you just said. Let's just say
Absolutely.
love in all its forms: joy, happiness, peace, tranquility, abundance, prosperity, all of it, right? So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you
I
for
gotta
that.
also just throw in here, a little of a funny thing, but I gotta say, there's a lot of downsides to being a Black woman in America right now, but there's also a lot of upsides. Out of all the
Absolutely.
centuries, out of all the timelines, I'm glad I came in for this one. There's a lot of benefits that I wouldn't have had just about 100 years ago. So, we gotta
Yeah.
look at that too. There is so much that is painful and so much that is unjust, but
Yeah.
yet there is also so much that is expanding, that is getting better, that is evolving and awakening. And I'm just so grateful that you and I can have conversations like this, and nobody's going to come and burn me at a stake for talking about it. And so we have so much. The fact that Black
Absolutely.
women today, Latina women today, are some of the most educated people in America
Yeah.
speaks about also what is changing. And so,
Yes.
yes, there's a lot for us to improve upon, but I also want to focus and celebrate on, in my humanness, how many advantages and benefits we have, and how it is our communities that are leading change and evolution in ways that have never been possible before.
Speaking of celebration, getting to my other question I was going to ask you about, joy. What brings you joy?
What brings Milana joy? Let's see. What brings me joy? Well, I think I'm kind of living that question right now, ironically, because now that for the past few years, I feel like so much has gotten to a secure and consistent place. I finally got to ask myself that, and then get into a place where joy felt safe. It's something I was just talking about in another Instagram post the
Mm,
other day. I think for so many of us who experience trauma or upheaval in our earlier years, joy and happiness can feel like a really scary thing and a scary place to be. And so, for the past few years, practicing feeling secure in joy and safety is just like one of the biggest gifts and challenges that I've come across. And so, in the exploration of that, one of the biggest things for me has been connecting with nature. I just love nature so much. I
ah,
think it is just really the great equalizer of humanity, and it really brings us back to a remembrance of what's really important. So I have a lot of joy spending time in nature with my fiance and our dog. They're actually
ah.
in nature right now while I'm in LA, so they get to have it without me right now this weekend. But it's a big thing for me. And another one is really speaking with my inner child and really working with her to understand what in the moment, because spontaneity is so important, what in the moment is exciting to her. Does she want to paint? Do we want to go and sing in the car with loud music? Do we want to work out? So for me, it's really about that tapping in to what's in the moment. And that for me today is going to be working out. I'm really enjoying working out and
Yes.
dancing with the music really loud as I drive down the street.
I love it. That's all caps, by the way. There's no like lowercase. It's I love it. Wow. Um, what's on the horizon for you? What you got cooking up for us?
Well, I'm working on my book right now. I'm so grateful to be in the place where I can share my story and some of the things I've learned along the way. So I'm focusing mostly on that this year. I also am going to be opening up some more retreats and in person events with me, both breathwork focused, but also just about reparenting and getting back to connecting with that inner child so that we can live and feel safe to be spontaneous and healthy and happy moment by moment. Another thing that I'm really looking forward to is traveling more. I'll be in Tokyo when
Ooh,
this comes out. I
yes.
think I'll actually be in Tokyo.
Ooh.
And I made a little promise to myself that I'm going to start traveling to more places that I haven't been. So I'll be in Asia quite a bit this year. We'll be in South America this year.
Nice.
Um, Getting to kind of go outside of my usual stomping grounds in the US and Europe. So that's what's coming. If you're in Asia or Central South America and you'd like to connect, I'd love to connect with you. If you want to go there with me, let me know. I've got some
Yes,
retreats and
please.
trainings coming up. Yeah, so really this book is my primary focus, and I'm so excited about that. And I just hope that anybody who resonates with anything that I'm sharing with right now, that you'll join me online and stay in touch so that we can get this book to you when it's ready.
Fantastic. My last question to you: when people are beginning this part of their journey, right, where they're kind of waking up, what are one or two important things you would like to say to that person who's beginning that journey?
That's a great question. You know, it's funny. I just said this to someone. I have a monthly breathwork circle that I do online breathwork sessions for. It's called the Monthly Integration, and we had a woman who just joined us. We do it every third Saturday of the month, and she just joined us and shared that she was having a really tough time because she was kind of finally realizing all the things that she's having an awakening. And
Wow.
my message to her, which I would say to anybody who's just getting started, is congratulations. Because
Mm,
this is a when you
mm,
finally
wow.
start waking up and you're ready to look at your patterns, which by the way are the patterns that have been perpetuated through generations longer than time immemorial, because someone taught you that and someone taught them that, and on and on. It's a really big deal to be the one who decides to stop the cycle, to what Harry S. Truman says, to make the buck stop here, right? So, congrats. That's big work. It's not to be taken lightly. I'm so proud of you. And with all that being said, I hope that they'll understand that sometimes it's going to be challenging. And there's just no getting around that. It's you gotta get strong, and you just gotta really give yourself some grace because it's gonna be messy.
Right.
And that's a
Right.
part of the healing process. But the other side of that I shared with her, that I'd like to share with anybody that feels like this is them right now, is that it doesn't always have to be messy and ugly. And yes, you will lose friends, you will lose family members, you might even lose jobs, you might even have to move. But guess what will also happen? You will gain new friends, new chosen family. Tons of abundance will start coming your way. Fun things will start opening up. Opportunities that you never thought you could actually have, you'll start to actually have. So it comes with both, and you got to open to both.
Yeah.
So just know that yes, it will be messy, and yes, it will be awesome. And if you allow yourself to really be fully in the process as a lifestyle and not just a one time hit, you are in for the best thing that you've ever gotten yourself into.
Wow. Well, on that note, I am glad that I stopped by your Instagram page many years ago, and said hello and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing called Soulivity. I love what you're doing." And I mean, that was a long time ago now.
Mhm.
Thank you for, as you were speaking, Millana, I had this vision of you as this beautiful bridge that when people are walking up to this valley, right? And on the other side is another place that they may think that they want to be, or wow, it would really be nice, but look at this valley. There's no way for me to cross it. And here you are embodying all these things and helping them create and bridge that gap between their own
Thank you.
trauma and this new life of happiness and joy and love and all the other stuff that they can now deal with, right? That
Mhm.
they have just more than a coping system, they have a thriving system. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for the support that you've given me over the years. Um, and whatever we can do to support you, we're going to be here to do that. And so thank you
Thank
again for
you.
being here on Soulivity. And, I'm going to get you back. I'm not even going to ask you, are you coming back? You're coming back here, and we're going to have some more
You got
conversations.
it.
Maybe we'll talk about the people side of this stuff, because that's a whole
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
So
A
thank you
lot
for
there.
being here. Yeah, thank you for being here, and we'll see you again soon on Soulivity, okay?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everybody for listening.